of, okay, what does that term leader mean? We are humans. You are one human leading another human. And what is your purpose in that? If your purpose is to extract all you can from that person and exploit it and use it to your purposes, that is not a sustainable life. It's not a way to live, whereas I think that if you really orient yourself around, you're here to serve and get the best work out of someone, because that enables them to flourish and that enables them to grow. And by serving them, you not only serve yourself, but you serve the greater purpose. It's a much healthier and more sustainable vision of leadership. In this time, leaders have had to interact with their employees over Zoom, and there's been a lot of stress and a lot of change. I think a leader's true colors really show, and you can really sense whether someone has the right orientation or not. And then
to mind. Number one is communication. I think the expectation for leaders to communicate clearly, frequently, personally, consistently, that has elevated tremendously, because employees really need to know what's going on. And with so much uncertainty out there, I think a lot of leaders are a little hesitant to communicate sometimes. They're not sure what's going on, so they don't want to go out and say something. But your employees need to hear from you. They need to hear from you, hear what you're working on, how you're processing things, what you're planning on doing, what the future vision that you see, and really you cultivate a lot of hope and optimism through your communication. So communication is number one. And number two, because many of your employees may be working remotely, they're not coming into the office where they are experiencing the culture and being able to engage with other employees the way they used to. So you need to actively cultivate employee connections to you as leaders through communication, employee connections to your brand, so that you consistently remind your employees why you're in business, why you exist, the value you're creating for your customers. You need to create connections between your employees and your customers. Make sure that your employees really understand what your customers want and need right now, and understand that those things have really changed because of the pandemic. And then cultivate employees' connections to each other. Again, they might not be seeing each other in person. So how do you create those kind of social bonds that used to exist in an office? Maybe
the first step is for you to go back to those core values and ask yourself, are these really right for us in terms of, do they capture our differentiation and our uniqueness and the specific ways that we create value for our customers or our clients, and then also our employees and our partners, et cetera. And really looking at whether those values are aligned with what you want to be known for in the world. And then here's the important part, is in order to operationalize those values, you need to identify what are the specific behaviors that would demonstrate what those values are all about. So, for example, if you wanted to become known as an innovative company, and therefore you want to embrace failure as a learning opportunity as kind of one of your values, well, what does that look like? That means rewarding a project manager when their project actually fails. That means doing after-action analyses after everything you do, so that you can pull out the learning points and then socialize them throughout your organization. Taking risks, being willing to invest in certain areas that you have not done before. So defining specific behaviors and specific actions that bring those values to life. I'd rather see you have more attainable, realistic values and do them well than to espouse these bigger, bolder values and just have them be empty words on a page. Your customers and your clients won't believe them, and more importantly, your employees won't believe, then you lose trust with them as well. Help people understand how your core values will impact the business and lead to the results you're looking for. You can't expect your employees to just kind of get it and or embrace it. It's the responsibility of a leader to make sure that their communication really engages people. As leaders, you can probably get really sick and tired of hearing yourself say the same thing over and over again. But the truth is that people need to hear something at least 3 times in order for them to get it, especially if you're have had different initiatives or different efforts in the past that have maybe not been successful or not seen through. It's going to take a lot more for your employees to believe you that this is something that's important and that they should get on board with. So I think just the more that you can communicate, the better. But I will say an important aspect of communication is two-way, right? So it's not just the leader talking and sharing, it's also the leader listening and understanding and developing empathy for their employees. And in that way, you build that trust and that bond and that alignment that is so critical to your organization.
So no longer can any leader, whether you are in a kind of more traditional organization or whether you're in one of these platform or ecosystem businesses, you can't afford to think that if you say it, it will happen. When it comes to culture. I think one thing that's really interesting about Apple is that they have established an ecosystem that's very aligned and very integrated, I would say very simplistically in two ways. One is that they do have very clear purpose and values, and by having such a foundation for so many years of that purpose and values and drawing people into their organization, and I mean in meaning consumers as well as partners as well as employees, through that, the attraction of what the company stands for and what it's trying to do in the world, I think that they have naturally attracted the kinds of partners and the kinds of people that want to work with them. So that's the first way. But then the second is that they have used levers that they have, as an app store to implement certain rules and certain procedures, now that they're going to be de-identifying consumers as they're using their apps. And ensuring a greater level of privacy. That's just another example of how they have implemented certain rules or certain processes that say, hey, even if you don't naturally align with these values, these are the things that we're going to be implementing, and you either need to get on the bus or we don't want you as a partner. So I think
often the middle layers of management within an organization get overlooked in any kind of cultural effort or any kind of transformation effort. And I think particularly now in the season of the pandemic, there's probably a lot of attention, given to, the senior leadership team and all kind of the strategic decisions that need to be made. And there's probably a lot of attention given to the kind of the frontline employees, and are they equipped and empowered to be able to serve their customers. But this kind of middle layer of management probably doesn't have the tools, they don't have the information, they don't have the resources to be able to help their team members. And so you need to make sure that all of your managers understand what your priorities are. I don't think that you can communicate too frequently to your managers so that they understand what you're working on, what are the new expectations that you have for them, what questions that you don't know answers to yet, but that you're working on. And then number two, empower. I think that one of the good things that's happened in the pandemic is I think a lot of organization leaders have understood that a flatter organization usually is a more agile organization. And so pushing down responsibility and decisions to the people who really can make an impact. And so, the frontline employees, their direct managers, and then get out of their way, Really thinking about your values and whether they are those more general category values that prescribe what would be at a very basic level your expectation for an employee, versus getting to those unique core values that define how you are going to thrive in this new world and how you are going to address the new risks in ways that that really reflect your unique capabilities, your unique competencies, your unique purpose. It probably behooves everyone to take another look at their code of conduct and really get a sense for, does this set us up for all of the possibility and opportunity that we have now.
It's like all of the operations and processes and actually how you work together is going to influence how people interpret that purpose and values and how they experience it. And so you have to be very intentional about those processes and practices and just kind of even the way that you're designed and who reports to who. And it sends not only a powerful message, but it really facilitates the kind of work that you want and you need your people to do. Your process is what you need to focus on, because plans can change and be very disruptive. But if you have clear processes for how we're going to do something, then your people can stay focused and they can adapt to whatever changes happen, because they're like, okay, we didn't know this was going to happen, but we have a process for that. And we have it, to your point, we have it documented and everyone knows how to do it. So I just love this idea of, let's imagine this is the last time we're going to do it and make sure that everyone knows exactly how to do it so that it is. You need to kind of be thinking about your new customer experience at three different levels. One is that there is still going to be some element of in-person customer experience. And so you need to be rethinking, how do you ensure the health and safety and good experience of both your employees and your customers? And so that's kind of the baseline. But I think most retailers
they can no longer rely on that in-person experience to be the primary way that someone experiences their brand. So they need to be thinking about the digital customer experience. And just as you would think about the entire customer flow or customer journey through all your different touch points that would get someone to a store, you need to be thinking about that online as well. And being aware that the way that people interact via digital is much different than in person. But then there's this third level of, not just taking what you used to do in person and putting it online, but actually thinking about your customer experience from this digital native perspective and be thinking, what could our customer experience be if we were to start from scratch? Think about, what does digital open up for us as opposed to what does digital constrain us to? It's a different mindset. Most brands these days know they need to have some sort of emotional appeal. So the fact that a brand creates some sort of emotional connection is really not news really anymore. What is different about brands like Nike and Trader Joe's, even Impossible Foods, is that it prompts people to identify with that brand, to see something in that brand that makes them feel that the brand not only gets them, but is also for them and inspires them to be a better person. There's that quote from that movie, As Good as It Gets, when Jack Nicholson's character says to Helen Hunt's character, "You make me want to be a better man." The best brands do that for their customers. They strike a chord in the customer in such a way that makes the customer want to be something better, to do something better, and the brand is part of that journey to that better. There are brand audits that you can do. Look at your brand from three perspectives. First, look at it from the context, and not just your competitive context, although that's very important, but also kind of the broader context of macroeconomic trends, social trends, cultural dynamics, and really understand, is your brand establishing a clear competitive advantage and a clear position in your broader context? The second is your customers. Who are your customers?
Right.
What do they need? And then are they perceiving your brand to fulfill those needs and expectations? And then the third is your company. All of your assets and resources, as well as the culture and the people within your organization, to determine, is your brand a reflection or a representation of that accurately? If your organization is not in a place that you want it to be, how does that need to change? And so then once you do that kind of audit of contact, customer, and company, then you've got a pretty good sense of how you're performing. And then you can use any number of tools. Like I recommend a SWOT analysis where you have an objective, which might be to reposition our brand. And then you examine your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats against that objective. But basically, all you're doing is you're kind of just determining, do we have the brand that we want or not?
There are certain tools that I think all employees need. So understanding who your key customers are and maybe giving profiles or creating personas to help really kind of cultivate that empathy and understanding that you're talking about people. That's an example all employees should get. And maybe even worksheets or quizzes or things that they can work through. Then within each person's specific role or responsibility, they're going to need tools to determine how do they nurture, interpret, reinforce the brand and the culture in their scope of work. And the best way to develop those tools is to do it with them. So often my process includes engaging on a department or functional basis, a workshop to make sure that everyone's clear on, what are the brand values and really what are we trying to go for? And then what are the tools you need in order to do that? Do you need a script, process chart, examples of the brand in use so that you know what is on brand and what is not? Do you need access to information from one of your colleagues so that you better understand a product and are able to represent that product on brand? So, you really need to be focused on the individual person's work and what is going to enable them to actually deliver on that brand. So definitely, transformation. I think that just in general, brands and businesses and business models and markets are all undergoing significant transformation. Also, I think the influence of tech, online education, online health, fintech, autonomous vehicles, we're at that point now where there are no longer technology brands or technology businesses. Every company is in the technology business. Agility is really important. So I don't want to say, throw away your 3-year brand plan, but I think that some transformation needs to happen in the way that we think about brand planning and the way we budget, forecast, allocate resources for the year, and even the way that we engage and work with agencies and marketing firms. All of that needs to be set up so that we can quickly turn on a dime. While I do think, there's still a role for strategy and long-term vision, the thought of locking in an annual plan at this point, I'm not sure that there's a lot of value to that. And I think you brought up something else that has been on my mind lately, and that is supply chain and the importance of logistics and the fact that you can have this great brand vision, but if you don't have the product where it needs to be when customers want to buy it, game over. And so
And I see a lot of companies try to speak into social issues, things that are relevant on social media, like the latest meme or whatever that's out there, without thinking about, do we really belong in this conversation? Do we have anything unique, relevant, and credible to say into this conversation? I think that most of the times these companies just think we have to do something. Oh, wouldn't this be cool? Oh, let's just do it. As opposed to really thinking through our values and our purpose as a company, and really, is this the right thing to do? In this particular time, people want companies to actually take action and do things, not just promote messages, not just do advertising, not just kind of say stuff, but actually make a positive contribution. So